Capital Park and Planning Commission does own the land that the Bladensburg Peace Cross currently sits on, which is why we were named in the suit. And the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission has owned that property since 1960.
This monument first came to our attention a couple of months ago when we became aware that an organization had filed a lawsuit against the state of Maryland to have the cross removed because they thought that it was offensive and an undue support of religion by the government. The American Legion, given that as an organization, when we were a young organization, funded and built this memorial in honor of and in remembrance of those who gave their lives in World War I from Prince George's County, Maryland. And so the cross has a modified version of the American Legion's emblem located on it, and given that history, the American Legion takes an interest in preserving the cross and keeping it where it stands, and petition the court to be allowed to become a party in the suit in order to defend the cross.
Well, I'm National Director of the United Coalition of Reason, and I have been a humanist probably since the time I was a teenager.
Well, I originally from North Carolina, came up here about a year ago to work for the Free Thought Equality Fund, which is the political action committee tied to the Center for Humanist Activism. And so my work deals with funding candidates who are non-theists, atheists, and agnostic, or candidates who agree to advocate for a separation of church and state and protecting the civil liberties of all Americans. So that's what my work does, and I'm a humanist and an atheist, and have been that way for a number of years.
I'm one of the plaintiffs that brought the case with the American Humanist Association.
Correct.
Yes, what that means, and that's really legal talk, what it refers to is the fact that I come here to Bladensburg from time to time to enjoy the War of 1812 celebrations. And when I come out here, I pass by the cross on my way to the waterfront park, or I pass by the cross on my way to other activities that are going on in the area. And it just reminds me that this cross is on public land. And I don't mind a cross per se, but knowing that it's on public land, knowing that it gives the impression that Bladensburg is a town that endorses one religion to the exclusion of others, that's the impression that's unwelcome.
No, it's a war memorial. It's a war memorial. These men died. I don't understand how someone can actually sleep at night or even have relatives that are veterans knowing that you are desecrating what they fought for. Not that they actually fought for that cross, but that cross was in honor and respect for our veterans who died.
Lived in Prince George County, and has frequently lived in Beltsville, Maryland, and would occasionally come down to this area, either going to DC or just coming to this area for the memorial and the parks and stuff. And when I first moved up here, I had no idea about the history of the War Memorial or the Peace Cross, and when I passed it, it just looked like this large Christian cross. And I was thinking, okay, well, who owns the land? And then it was brought to my attention that it was publicly owned, so then that's the issue. And so when the issue came about and they approached me about it, I was definitely on board and something that I wanted to be a part of. So it's definitely have ran across it several occasions in my travels to this area.
No idea what the guys, I'm assuming this is one person or a small organization. I don't know what their real issue is. To say that they're offended by it, to me, just doesn't make any sense.
My family grew up here. I mean, my father grew up in Hyattsville. I've my whole entire life I've driven past this Peace Cross. So I mean, it has a lot of personal value to me. But I can't imagine why you'd be offended.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things to be offended or in our country, and this is not one of the ones that I really.
The Humanist Association has been around since 1941, and it's the nation's largest humanist organization. I was executive director of the American Humanist Association from 1984 to 1999, so I have a long history with the organization.
Be human.
Yeah, there's a symbol for. If you go to the American Humanist Association website,
Okay, yeah, I've kind of seen it. It looks like a little.
it's a man, it's
Yeah.
a person. It's not gender specific, and they're raising their arms up in joy. We're happy humans.
Does, as its membership, represents a tiny portion of the population. But in terms of speaking out for secular-minded people of a similar viewpoint, we're talking that the association really represents closer to something like 15% of the American population.
Well, I know there was a complaint about it being a cross, and I'm a Jew, and it certainly does not offend me, and it's standing for all the people who have perished trying to protect this country, and which was based on freedom. And my father came here from right out of the Holocaust, and he one day told me he was very concerned about America, and when I asked him why, he said, because Americans often are like sheep. And I almost didn't come today, but I thought I don't want to be one of the sheep. It's time to stand up.
Right.
And he had said that's how Hitler did what he did, because everybody acted like sheep and just followed along and waited for somebody else to stand up. So that's why I'm here today. I just can't see something that has been here all these years that I've passed since I was 5 years old,
Right.
to be a bother to somebody.
Yes, my grandfather was in World War II. Uncle was in Korean War. Many uncles who served in military. So yeah, a lot of people in my family have military ties. If they knew and presented with, the arguments of both sides, I feel really strongly that they would, they might have some hesitation about, their viewpoints or agreeing with mine, but I think that they can definitely appreciate the argument that we're making.
They were somebody's son, somebody's father, somebody's grandfather, somebody's brother, somebody's cousin. That's the bottom line. And you can't treat people like that. If you don't stand for something, you're going to fall for anything. And I know me, I'm not falling for it. When I lay my head down at night, I don't care if you're alive and I don't care if you're deceased. Somebody needs to stand up for you. They need to stand up for the living veterans just as well as we stand up for the ones that are deceased.
It was during the Vietnam War that I came of age, that I graduated from high school in 1967, and I was highly critical of the war and I was against it. But nonetheless, I was called up for my draft physical and I went. But I was a really skinny kid back then. And they also found that I had a hernia. So as a result of that, my being very much underweight and also having that hernia, they wouldn't take me.
Never was presented, I was always, education was my path to success, and my career was always involved in politics, and so the military was never an option for me.
So what I did instead is I joined the Peace Corps, and I served 2 years in the Peace Corps. College when the draft came up, and I wanted to finish my college.
Okay.
Chris Nyweem, Iraq veteran and member of the American Legion.
Sean Riley, Iraq veteran and assistant director of the National Legislative Division with the American Legion.
Jeff Steele, Lebanon, Grenada, veteran, member of the American Legion.
Their goal is to get this moved. Like that's what motivates them, and what motivates us is we serve, we know what it means, and we know people have lost their lives, and something like this is special, and it means something to them. So we're going to fight for it.
Drive by where that cross is now and you look at it, it looks for all the world like it's on public land. It looks for all the world like, okay, this is either the state of Maryland or the city of Bladensburg endorsing one religion. So even if you took a postage-sized stamp piece of property right under the cross and said, okay, we're going to sell that to someone else, and therefore technically it will belong to someone else, the passerby driving by would not get that impression. And when it's illuminated at night, it's just a bright cross-shaped light in the night. It gives the impression of Christianity and nothing else, and it gives the impression of government endorsement of Christianity.
The reason that we're out here is because of this Peace Cross.
And how do you feel about the Peace Cross?
I want it to stay right where it's at.
Okay. And why is it important to you?
Because to me, it's a symbol, of men and women that died to protect this country, for our freedom. And that's the reason why we can stand right here, right now, and we can talk openly. We can say anything we want to each other because we have freedom of speech.
Exactly.
We have our Constitution and everything else. And any time that somebody threatens that, that's when we get on our bikes and we ride.
That's
to
wonderful.
support that. And the cross itself It's just that it's just a cross. You know, it's not there as a you know, a religious monument. It's there for, you know, to honor men and women who fell, you know, to protect this country. And that's something that we as the biker community, it's very, very important to us, you know. And we'll ride to any monument to support it. And we don't care where it's at, you know, but we'll go to any monument.
Although I have never served myself and never had any intentions of serving, I'm very, very patriotic and sympathetic of everybody who has given, you know, their time and especially who have given their lives to fight for our country. So, again, I don't know if that takes away from the case in itself in it being on public grounds. So I don't have any issue with the cross and people memorializing you know, fallen soldiers who might have been Christian on their own personal time. The issue is you can't have it being on public grounds as a government endorsement of one particular religion over another.
And we would be very happy if the cross were to be replaced by a flag.
Peggy has done all the work and the archives and the history. She has brought these men's faces to life. She even pulled up the last letter to mom of one of the soldiers that died.
That was really sad.
It was really sad. And these people, no, it's a war memorial. It's a war memorial. These men died. I don't know.
At this point, and from its original inception in 1919, the Peace Cross was built as a memorial to the veterans that died in service of this country in World War I. So the Peace Cross has always been a war memorial. There are no religious markings whatsoever on the Peace Cross. It is not of any religious intent. It was built here as a first monument in what is now our Memorial Park, and it's been standing in completion since 1925. And we know that the community loves the Peace Cross. It's been part of this community for nearly 100 years, and so again we own many national, statewide and local historic figures. So the department is more than happy to own pieces of Maryland history.
If the Peace Cross was on the National Register of Historic Places, then it could not be removed or destroyed by the American Humanist Association or the three plaintiffs or anyone else. Plus, there would be funding to clean it and maintain it.
That is true, Renee, which is something very significant to consider.